The only thing of value is the thing you cannot say.
Well, Judge, apparently thousands and thousands of people believe that the world is going to end 4 years from now.
And 2012 is not even over yet.
We're 3 hours into December 21st, 2012.
And there are many, many, many correspondents on the internet that believe that that's still going to be the case. Oh my god.
Dark side.
Oh my god. Oh. Shut.
YouTube's darkest side.
YouTube was founded in February of 2005, and in the 20 years since then, it has grown into something that its 3 original creators almost certainly never imagined. A place where over 800 hours of video are uploaded every single minute, where you can find a tutorial for anything, a community for anything, a corner for anything. While going down rabbit holes for this channel, I came across something quite disturbing. January 21st, 2010. An enigmatic video was uploaded to a quiet corner of YouTube. The footage was jarringly simple, yet deeply unsettling. It featured a man standing high up on the branch of a tree, draped in what looks like a white bedsheet that resembles wings, as if he were a bird of prey preparing for flight. The video relied on a primitive, jarring editing technique to make the man appear and disappear in different sections of the tree line, mimicking a sort of unnatural, instantaneous teleportation. To anyone stumbling across the clip at the time, it felt like an eerie artifact of early internet strangeness. A bizarre home video lost in the infinite expanse of a rapidly growing platform. But the title of the video painted a far more ominous picture than the footage itself. The YouTube channel itself had been created only a day earlier, on January 20th, 2010, under the username Nostradamus Portugal. Then, almost immediately after its creation, the account uploaded 4 videos on January 21st, and the first video of the man on the tree would quietly linger on the platform for years, eventually accumulating over 35,000 views. As you scroll through the channel's video grid, a recurring phrase begins to stand out. Every upload contains some variation of the same copied and pasted line in its title. 2012, End of the World, Beginning of the New Era. The wording would usually be attached to different descriptions or scenarios, but that apocalyptic slogan was always there, repeated again and again across the channel. It looks like he was branding himself as an apocalyptic prophet, calling himself the King of Gnomes and a wise master. The descriptions underneath these initial videos were erratic, written in heavily broken Portuguese with multiple spelling mistakes. The creator first identifies himself by his initials, writing, "Born in Portugal, F.J.C. Leitão, the new King of Gob, Master Magician King of the Gnomes." But right after, the language takes an incredibly dark turn, where he explicitly crowns himself as a new god, son of Lucifer. The creator goes on to detail a highly intricate mechanical system of spiritual power. He claims his physical form is completely indestructible, possessing the power of teleportation, transformation, electroplasma, and the ability to manifest a duplicate body. The details go on and on. In one of the videos uploaded that day, he shows what he calls a prank, presenting himself as a ghost in a local cemetery. That video would somehow explode in the algorithm, eventually drawing in over 549,000 views. To early, ordinary internet users browsing Portuguese forums and comment sections of his videos, the channel came across as bizarre and complete nonsense. The creator would upload a total of just 6 videos to this channel, and the final 2 uploads would reveal a deeply concerning escalation.
O comentário que eu venho aqui deixar neste preciso momento é o seguinte.
On February 11th, 2010, the content creator uploads a 4-minute monologue outlining a terrifying prediction. He claims that a massive, catastrophic earthquake is scheduled to devastate Portugal on August 8th, 2010, completely destroying 76% of the country's entire coastline.
Hoje, dia 8 de fevereiro do ano 2010, faltam 6 meses até chegar ao dia 8 de agosto do ano 2010, dia em que está previsto, até mesmo já estudado pela ciência portuguesa, de que há terremoto que vai acontecer em Portugal.
He warns that it would be vastly worse than the infamous 1755 Lisbon earthquake. But right in the middle of the warning, he offers a solution. He claims that he possesses a unique internal strength, stating that he would project his own wrath and magnetic energy into the earth to single-handedly stop the tectonic cataclysm from happening.
Eu vou deitar a minha ira cá para fora. Eu vou deitar o meu poder cá para fora. E o terremoto não pode acontecer de forma alguma.
He promises his viewers that he would also step in to prevent the world from ending on December 22nd, 2012. But it was his final upload, posted just 11 days later, that shifted the tone of the channel from strange and bizarre to entirely disturbing. The camera frames Francisco, but we see that he is no longer alone in the room. Sitting further back are 2 young lads. He tells the audience that these 2 are completely vulnerable, stating that they are not ready to face the impending evolution of the world, the asteroids, and the meteorites that will soon rain down from the sky. He announces to the camera that he is 41 years old and that he is the only one prepared to survive.
Do meu lado direito tenho aqui amigo, o Daniel, que tem 16 anos. Ele não está pronto para enfrentar o fim do mundo no dia 21 de dezembro do ano 2012. Vai ter 19 anos na altura. O Nelson, que está aqui, na altura vai ter 30. E eu vou ter 44 anos. Eu estou preparado, mas eles não estão. Portanto, nem vocês estão preparados para a nova evolução do novo mundo.
The 2 lads, looking noticeably awkward and quiet under his presence. Then, he instructs them to close their eyes. He commands them to concentrate their minds while he moves his hands towards the camera, claiming that they are combining their physical bodies to create a massive magnetic protective wave to shield the human race. After uploading this video, the Nostradamus Portugal channel went completely dark. He never uploaded again. But the silence wasn't a sign that the content creator had given up on his digital mission. In fact, it was the exact opposite. The very next day, on February 23rd, 2010, less than 24 hours after abandoning his primary YouTube channel, the exact same man created a brand new channel under the username Francisco Hagob. The second channel would also settle at a very small subscriber base, but across the 28 videos he would go on to upload here, the entire channel pulled a massive, disproportionate amount of engagement, accumulating over 1 million views. This second channel features an erratic, highly chaotic gallery of everyday rural life, magic tricks, Francisco singing, and videos he labeled as pranks. But despite the shift to a more casual content style, the Doomsday branding remains entirely intact. Every single one of the 28 videos features the exact same repeating block of text in the title: End of the World, Beginning of the New Era. The videos felt harmless, low budget, and mysterious. But as the uploads continued through the spring and summer of 2010, the real-world environment surrounding this channel was quietly shifting into a living nightmare. The FJC Letal, in the description of some of his videos, stands for Francisco José da Cruz Letal, a Portuguese man who was born and raised in the western region of Portugal. Francisco operated as a local junk collector and scrap metal dealer. He spent his days driving an old van through quiet rural towns, hauling away discarded iron, broken appliances, old vehicles and industrial waste. An eccentric tradesman making a living off the things society threw away. Members of his own family knew that beneath the exterior of a simple scrap dealer lay a deeply volatile, deeply calculating personality. He didn't want to be viewed by his community as a mere junk collector. He wanted to be revered. He wanted an empire. And using the raw, industrial materials he accumulated from his scrap metal trade, Francisco literally set to work building his own empire from scratch. Around the mid-2000s, with absolutely no building permits, legal zoning, or structural safety checks, Francisco began constructing his magnum opus, the castle of Carqueja. Over the years, Francisco continuously expanded the property, turning a basic rural plot into a heavily fortified compound lined with hand-carved medieval battlements, towering watchtowers, and mythological structures. But by far the most unsettling feature of the estate was his obsession with decoration, surrounding the entire fortress with dozens of weathered stone and concrete gnomes, alongside crude statues of folklore creatures. It was a surreal, deeply eerie environment, and it was here, hidden away behind those concrete walls, that Francisco completely shed his identity as a scrap dealer and fully transformed into his digital persona. Francisco would tell his audience that his concrete walls and his supernatural magnetic powers were the only things capable of repelling the meteorites and the earthquakes he was predicting. However, the fortress wasn't only built to keep the apocalypse out, it was also designed to keep people in. Now, while Francisco used his YouTube channels to broadcast his doomsday prophecies to the wider world, his true hunting grounds were kept entirely out of the public eye. To build his inner circle, he turned to the dominant social networks of the era. In the late 2000s, long before Facebook or Instagram took over the country, High Five was the biggest social media platform by far for teens in Portugal. It was a platform built on public visibility, where teenagers constantly shared their lives, and it was here that Francisco began silently mapping out his targets. Using his Gnome King persona, Francisco spent his time searching the platform, sending friend requests to teenagers between the ages of 14 and 17. He focused entirely on teens living in isolated, rural towns along the western coast of Portugal, all fairly close to his own area. Once contact was established on High Five, Francisco would quickly pivot the conversations to private MSN Messenger chat rooms. Online, he made himself out to be this incredibly rich, overly generous guy. He basically figured out exactly what these kids were missing. If a boy was massive into gaming or tech, Francisco would go on and on about the high-end computers he had back at the castle. To get them to completely trust him, he started buying them whatever they wanted, including mobile phones. To the parents of these teenagers, Francisco seemed like an eccentric, perhaps overly friendly older neighbor who was simply helping out local kids. But the electronic gifts served a dark, alternative purpose. By providing the minors with custom mobile devices, Francisco ensured he had a direct, 24-hour digital line to them, slowly shifting his role from a friendly internet novelty to an authority figure who demanded constant communication. And once he successfully lured them away from their screens and into the physical confines of the castle, the digital grooming process ended, and a terrifying psychological conditioning took its place. Inside his property, the doors were locked, and the atmosphere shifted completely. Francisco would suddenly alter his voice, his posture, his entire demeanor, claiming to be possessed by a dark entity he called the Old Man. He would look the terrified teenagers dead in the eye and tell them that the Old Man had just delivered a message that a curse had been placed, that either they or someone they loved were marked for an immediate, violent death out in the real world, and that the only way to stop it from happening was to do exactly what he told them to do. It was a performance, but to the young people inside that castle, it didn't feel like one. Through this relentless back-and-forth cycle of digital rewards and physical terror, Francisco successfully created a cult-like isolation. The teenagers were trapped in a loop, terrified to tell their parents because they believed doing so would trigger the spiritual death sentence Francisco had hanging over their homes. For nearly 2 years, this private network operated completely in the shadows, entirely unnoticed by local authorities. But by the summer of 2008, the delicate psychological walls Francisco had built around these followers were beginning to fracture. They wanted to leave. Outside the perimeter of his castle, families were starting to notice that their children were changing, becoming distant, hypervigilant, and intensely protective of their phones. Then, on June 5, 2008, the digital footprint of 27-year-old Tanya Ramos suddenly flatlined. Tanya had become deeply embedded in Francisco's inner circle, frequently visiting the castle. But on that June afternoon, she walked out of a hospital where her 9-year-old daughter Karina was admitted at the time, telling the little girl she was leaving to help a friend organize a wedding party. She never came back. And what makes it even worse is that just 3 days later, it was Karina's 10th birthday, and her mother wasn't there for it. Ivo Delgado had also been a frequent visitor to the castle, and far more than that. For years, Ivo and Tanya had been in a relationship. But Ivo had also become deeply entangled with Francisco himself, living inside the compound and spending almost every day inside his orbit. But investigators believe it was the relationship between Tanya and Ivo that ultimately sealed her fate. The theory was that Francisco, consumed by a possessive jealousy over Ivo, came to view Tanya as a threat. Someone whose presence in Ivo's life could pull him away from the castle entirely. By removing her, he believed he could keep Ivo bound to him completely. But the plan immediately backfired. Following Tanya's sudden disappearance, Ivo grew deeply suspicious and began making desperate attempts to distance himself from Francisco and break away from the group entirely. But Francisco wasn't going to just let them walk away. Just 3 weeks later, on June 26th, Ivo vanished too. He was never seen alive again. For the next 2 years, the investigation into the missing couple stalled. Local authorities faced an absolute void of physical evidence. There were no crime scenes, no struggles, and no witnesses. But out in the digital space, a highly unusual, deeply disturbing anomaly was occurring. Even though Tanya and Ivo were physically gone, their mobile phones were still actively moving across mobile networks. Weeks after their disappearances, their parents began receiving incoming text messages from the missing children's numbers. The messages were cold and blunt. They claimed that Tanya and Ivo had made a mutual, sudden decision to flee the country together, stating they had moved to France to find work at a local bar and that their families should stop looking for them. To the desperate parents, these text messages provided a fleeting, agonizing shred of hope. The digital mask Francisco used to hide his actions worked for nearly 2 years. But on March 3rd, 2010, the loop broke entirely. 16-year-old Joanna Correa, a local student who had recently been drawn into Francisco's circle, vanished after leaving her school. Unlike the previous cases, Joanna's family instantly pointed authorities directly toward the castle. The realization tore through the local community. Young people connected to the scrap dealer weren't simply moving away, they were disappearing. But investigators from Portugal's National Counter-Terrorism Unit soon uncovered a much darker reality. When they tracked the signals of those incoming messages, they didn't trace them to France. They pinged the exact mobile towers surrounding Francisco's property. In July 2010, the digital and physical worlds of Francisco completely collided. The judicial police showed up at the castle with search warrants, and Francisco was placed under arrest. What followed was a series of searches of the property. Around 10 investigators spent a full day going through the castle, seizing bags of pharmaceuticals and illegal military materials. They found the missing teenager's physical SIM cards hidden on the property. He had been using them to text the family's fake updates to cover up his crimes. They came back again after that, and again. At one point, the investigators returned with Francisco himself, brought from his cell to try to locate an underground dungeon where a witness had claimed Ivo had been held alive after his disappearance. They couldn't find it. They found nothing that led them to the bodies. When the case went to trial in January 2012, the prosecution faced a very specific problem. There were no bodies, no primary crime scene, no cause of death. And throughout the entire proceedings, Francisco sat in silence, refusing to make any declarations whatsoever to the panel of judges. Only in his closing statement did he speak. And when he did, all he said was that he was innocent of the homicides and that he hadn't killed anyone. But the prosecution wasn't relying on a confession. The SIM cards belonging to all 3 missing young people had been found inside Francisco's property, and forensic analysis showed they had been inserted into his own devices after the disappearances. On top of that, mobile tower data placed Francisco and Joanna traveling the same route on the day she vanished. And the photographs and letter that had been handed to Ivo's family as proof he was alive and well somewhere abroad, those had been created on Francisco's own computer. On March 29, 2012, the verdict came in. Francisco was found guilty of the murders of Tanya Ramos, Ivo Delgado, and Joanna Correa, and the concealment of their bodies. He was sentenced to 25 years, the maximum allowed under Portuguese law. Francisco was locked away. His YouTube channels went dark. And to most people following the case, it felt like the end of the story. It wasn't. This total absence of physical remains led internet sleuths to formulate a grim theory. One specific video immediately became the focal point of intense scrutiny. The video, titled "Francisco is attacked by pigs and wild boars." The piece of footage of him out in a concrete pen on his property, washing and playing around with these massive pigs and boars. At the time of its original release, viewers paid absolutely no attention to the background or the environment. It was dismissed as just another eccentric stunt by an odd man. But when you watch that footage back with the knowledge of the timeline, the details become deeply uncomfortable. Something on the ground catches your eye. Right there in the concrete, you can see dark, reddish stains. Internet users have pointed them out, questioning whether what they're looking at could be dried human blood and remains. This is exactly what sparked a really dark theory on Portuguese true crime forums. People started suggesting that Francisco wasn't just keeping those pigs as pets, but that he'd actually used them to get rid of the bodies. It would explain why police never found Tanya, Ivo, or Joanna anywhere, because there was simply nothing left to bury. Whether the footage captured the immediate aftermath of a cleanup, or simply the messy reality of a rural farm, remained a point of intense debate online. Five years after his murder conviction, while serving his time in a high-security prison, Francisco was quietly brought back into a courtroom. This secondary legal battle received far less media coverage, occurring entirely behind closed doors, under strict judicial secrecy, to protect the identities of those involved. A separate, massive investigation tracking his legacy internet traffic on High5 and MSN Messenger had uncovered an entirely separate layer of horror. The trial revealed that Francisco's castle hadn't just been a staging ground for apocalyptic manipulation. It was a highly organized hub for the systematic exploitation of minors. In September 2017, the court sentenced Francisco to an additional 17 years in prison, convicting him of multiple counts of rape, CSA, and the production of CP. But because Portuguese penal law strictly mandates that no individual can serve a continuous sentence longer than 25 years, this secondary 17-year sentence could not legally extend his time behind bars. It simply ran concurrently with his primary murder conviction. I'll leave it here for today. If this video was worth your time, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe so you never miss a video. Stay vigilant, and as always, thanks for watching.